Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam. On behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for tonight's event with Grace Miceli in conversation with Jordan Sondler, discussing how to deal with fear, failure, and other daily dreads. Thank you both for being with us tonight. We'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website by signing up for our email newsletter, as well as following us on social media at Book Soup, or you can follow us right here on Crowdcast to get direct emails. Our next event is Monday with Jean Hanf Korelitz in conversation with Megan Daum discussing the plot. And past events are also available on our YouTube channel. Tonight's event will end with a Q&A, and to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. And if you see a question on the list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, just click the like button next to the question and it'll bump it up in the queue, and we will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. I think you can also give questions if they arise early. You can put them in early and they'll go back and forth between conversation and questions. So please feel free to do that, and to also engage with each other and the conversation in the chat area. Also, please support Book Soup and our authors tonight by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book, which you can do by clicking the green button right below the viewer screen. It'll redirect you to our website where you can finish the checkout process, and it won't interrupt viewing, so you can do that at any time. We are also open for in-store browsing, so if you are local and are able to, please come by the store daily from 11 to 5, and we'd love to see you. And with all that said, let me introduce our guests for this evening. Grace Miceli, aka Art Baby Girl, is one of the 9 funniest cartoonists and illustrators on Instagram, according to Vulture. Her artwork has been featured in more than 50 galleries and museums worldwide. She has created work for The New Yorker, The New York Times, Apple TV, Urban Outfitters, and Nike, and has been covered by Vogue, ID, Dazed, CNN, and more. Grace lives in Brooklyn, New York. Jordan Sondler, our guest tonight, is an illustrator and mental health advocate living in New York City. She is the author of Feel It Out, a guide to celebrating where you are now, even if it heartbreaks, career setbacks, and growing pains are getting in your way. Sorry, I said it. I don't know why. Even if heartbreaks, career setbacks, and growing pains are getting in your way. She designs many things, including murals, television sets, 90s nostalgia diaries, sounds amazing, and beyond. Select clients include the New York Times, Google, Nickelodeon, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, HarperCollins, and Pottery Barn. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to Grace and Jordan. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you so much. Here we are. Hello, Jordan.
Hi, Grace. Hi, everyone in the audience. Thank you so much for being here with us at 9 p.m. or 6 p.m. or wherever you are in the world. Grace!
I know. I made a book. What? It's so cool. Oh, my ring light is blowing out the colors.
See, I don't have a ring light, so everyone can see this in truer form. It's a beautiful book. If you don't have it already, I hope that we can convince you by the end of the hour to smash that button down there and buy a copy. I have 2 copies.
They made it so easy for you.
It's really cool. Hi. And yes, definitely buy my book too. So definitely ask questions and we will answer them as we go along. But I have some of my own questions. I need to know how Grace made this book, how she makes her work in general, and what's inspiring her. So my first question would be, hey, Grace, how do you deal?
I mean, it really depends on the day, right? Like, I think what I tried to do in the book was explore all the different ways to deal, right? Like, sometimes you need to cancel all your plans for the day and watch 5 movies in a row and eat all your favorite snacks. Sometimes you need to, like, find a new therapist. Sometimes you need to call a friend. Sometimes you need to go on a walk. Like, there's, depending like where we're at, what we're going through, there is a range of things. And I think that a lot of self-help, I don't know, maybe like isn't realistic or tells us to like do things that just are really hard when, you know, like you have work, you have friends, you have relationships, family, right? All this stuff. It's hard to like just, you know, meditate and journal and like be this perfect version of what someone who is like working on themselves is doing.
So did it take you a while to figure out what exactly was going to help you deal versus what people are putting out there telling you, like, you're going to feel so much healthier if you do XYZ, or you feel so much happier if you know, implement this in your life? Like, how did you get to the point where you found what really worked for you personally?
I mean, I think it's really hard, and I think it's something I'm still figuring out, right? Like even though I made a book about it and I can tell all my friends to like just relax and, you know, like it's okay, I still struggle with it, right? It's like you become aware, that's the first step, but it still takes a really long time to like know in your body and fully believe that it's okay to like not answer anyone's emails for a day. Like all that sort of stuff, right? Like I still am mean to myself a lot of the times when I don't do what I'm supposed to. So yeah, I think it just took like a very long time, and it's just steps. It's like first you become aware of maybe what could help, and then you try all these different things. And I think life is just, you just keep trying different things, and like the same ways to cope, the same ways to deal are not always going to work, right? It's like,
Yes, I was just thinking that while you were talking, like, for me, it's important to remember and not be so hard on myself if something that worked for me yesterday or a year ago just doesn't fit any longer and I need something else. And Jennifer, I'm really happy to hear that this is making you feel a lot better and not like a freak, because you're not a freak, but also I am a freak. And I think maybe Grace would identify as a freak because freaks are cool. And yeah, I think we all feel really isolated a lot of times when we're talking about our feelings and thinking about our feelings, but I feel like there's no feeling that has never been felt. Don't you feel that way? Like, I probably feel a lot of the same things you feel. Maybe it's not in the same moment, but I feel like I could relate to a lot of the things racing through your head. And now it's confirmed by reading this book. Like, I don't know if I don't know if like anyone else has read this book aside from me and Grace, but everything was so relatable. And I honestly would challenge anyone to say, like, I don't get it. I haven't felt that.
yeah, no, and I think that was something that unfortunately, like it took me a very long time in my life to get to that point where I felt like safe or comfortable admitting that I like had any negative feelings at all, right? Like any feelings that were, you know, like sad or angry or any of the darker stuff, right? For so long I was like, I'm so happy all the time. Like nothing bothers me. I'm the right, like the chill girl who just doesn't care about anything. Which is not true at all. And then as soon as, right, you like start just letting those, you know, like darker whatever feelings around, you realize that it's like the most universal thing in the world, right? Like every movie, every song, like art for so long, right? People have been channeling these things, and you know, now it's maybe we're like more explicitly able to say it. You know, there's artists like us and friends who are like saying, you know, I'm sad today. Like that's
Totally.
become more
I
normalized.
mean, it's cool to hear you say this, that to talk about like where you came from and where you are now with your feelings, and like openly admitting to yourself and other people like, hey, I have feelings, because I just read that in your book also. So it's like, I don't know, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I've definitely felt that way. What comes to mind is with dating. Like, I don't necessarily know that I've been so self-confident, self, what am I trying? Oh, self-conscious. I don't know that I've been so self-conscious about revealing my feelings and that I actually have feelings in the way that I have with dating. And I bet you can relate to that. And because I've seen your work around all of this stuff, I wonder what really started you to get comfortable with making actual work about this, never mind just admitting to other people, like, hey, I have feelings. Hey, it's scary, but I feel.
Totally. I think so. Like, one note is that once I started my journey with therapy like 3.5 years ago, I was able to look back and be like, okay, I have actually been talking about my feelings in my work, but just I was not aware. Like, I was kind of subconsciously doing it. But my therapist she did encourage me to like explore it through my art. So, and I think I just like, you know, how I communicate with the world is like through my illustrations, through my comics. Like, that's how I can say things that I can't always say in words, right? Like, I don't just write. There's always a combination of illustrations with the text, because to me, like, when those two things come together, it can actually be evocative of like what's really going on, right? More so than just saying like, today I feel terrible. It's like with illustration, with art, it can add this like, or the goal, right, is to add this other layer of just like a feeling you get in your body when you see it all together. So I just knew I had to do that. So I was able to create it, but I think the scariest thing for me was sharing it, was like putting it on the internet. And the first few times I did it, I would feel like ill. Like, I would post post an illustration online that was not funny, that was just like straight up honest and vulnerable. And it was so terrifying, right? Because you're just like essentially like you're bearing your, you know, your true self to people. You're not hiding behind stuff. And it gets easier the more you do it, but I just had to be scared.
Have you ever made some artwork that felt too personal to post? Like, do you ever make work inspired by your feelings and decide like, I'm not ready to share that? Or what would you say, like, how do you get yourself to a place where you're like, okay, I'm going to take that leap and like make myself maybe more vulnerable in a way I haven't been before?
I think it's just like, I'm just still figuring it out, right? Like, there's sometimes I think when I feel the most uncomfortable about it is maybe if I'm making art about something which is all of my feelings, but something that I haven't like really learned yet, right? Like, if it's something I'm just starting to figure out, but I'm really trying to just let that be, because, you know, like, none of us, you can be doing this sort of like self-exploration, self-awareness journey, self-actualization, whatever. You can be doing it for like 30 years and still have more to learn about yourself and about how you feel and think. So I'm trying to be like, okay, it's okay that I'm not an expert. It's okay that I'm, you know, can make art about something and then the next week like act in a way that, you know, like, where it's like, oops, like, wait.
Totally. I mean, something that stuck with me that my therapist has told me several times is that I know how to talk about my feelings or draw my feelings, but I'm not as great at feeling my feelings. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that. I mean, basically what you were just saying.
Oh, exactly. Like, and that's something that again, it took me a while to realize that's what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm talking about my feelings. Like, I figured it out. Like, because that was, for me, that was a huge leap. But then, yeah, sometimes I would feel like a fraud because I would be making art about my emotions and be like, oh, I can't remember the last time I actually like let myself cry. Right. It's like, so yeah, I don't know. That's still something I'm really working on, is not just like having it all go on in my head and trying to get in touch with like and there's a few comics in the book, right, of like what a feeling is in your body. Like, is it like hot? Is it is it like an empty, just like what does it physically kind of do to you?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's definitely something I do. And yeah, I want to shift away from that, right? From only expressing it that one way.
What type of person did you have in mind, or who did you have in mind when you were writing this book? Like, who did you want to get this in the hands of?
I mean, I've said it in a few other kind of interviews, but I really think this book is for a younger version of myself. I think that that's like a very common thing with artists, right? It's like you make the thing that you needed however many years ago. So that's, I think, who I'm writing this for, right? It's like, this is, technically like a self-help book, but it really just kind of is like my brain in the form of a book, right? My inner monologue, my like, obsessive, anxious, all the stuff that's in there. But like with everything I've learned these past few years and stuff, that I'm like, oh my God, like if only I would have known this as a teenager, like, and not in a regretful way, right? It's like I know that my journey, like however long it took me, all the places I went, that without those things, I like maybe wouldn't have made this book. So not in that way, but just being like, yeah, if there's anyone that struggles to deal, which I think is mostly everyone, I hope that it could, again, it's not gonna, I know this book is not gonna like solve anyone's problems, but I think that it, like, my hope for it is that it could allow you to like be a little bit nicer to yourself while you figure out like what you actually need to maybe do to just like
Absolutely. And I think that does solve a lot of problems. I think that does solve a lot of problems for people if they can be kinder to themselves while they're trying to figure out what to do next, what to think. Because anytime I'm beating myself up, I know it doesn't make any decision process easier for me. So I think having like that confidence in yourself, and also being reminded that, hey, like, here's a book written by a total stranger and it's saying all these things I can relate to. So that makes me feel like, oh, maybe there's a lot of people that can relate to this, and maybe it's not me, and maybe I'm not terrible. Maybe my brain just works this way and is prone to thinking this about myself. I think it can like pull you out of your own little world and like give you some perspective, which is very powerful and solves a lot of problems.
I think so. And I mean, I wanted to make a book for so many reasons, but one of those reasons is that, like, again, when I started my journey a few years ago, like, yes, therapy was a huge part of it, and yes, making my art was a huge part of it, but reading books like that were in the like self-help spiritual genres, like those books were such a huge part of me, of like my healing and my figuring stuff out. So my hope is that like even one page or one line from this could just like spark something in someone to be like, okay, like maybe I'll stop being so mean to myself about this one thing ever.
What is your favorite book to this day that you had listened to? Or like something that stands out in your mind? Maybe something you haven't even listened to since you were younger, but something that made an impact in that sense.
I mean, I really love Pima Chodron's work and I love Tara Brach's work. They're both like listed in the back of the book as resources. They both are kind of in that spiritual world, which, you know, I know is maybe not for everyone, but I love Tara Brach because she also like leads these guided meditations, and in her talks she is always referencing like New Yorker cartoons or comics that she's seen or jokes, and I think can bring like a sense of humor to like spiritual stuff that, you know, someone like me 5 years ago would have rolled their eyes at. But
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
it's really calming to me.
I love this resources page, which no one can read. No one can read from here. But it's so cool to see, like, I mean, how many are there? I don't know, over 20 different people and books, pieces of literature listed that like promote this style of thinking, you know, not like toxic positivity, that
Right.
buzzword, you know, to think about like actually what is realistic for people and like self-acceptance. I think it's really, really cool that more and more people like yourself, like me, like all these people listed under the resources page are putting that stuff out there. And it's getting, you know, it's not as hard to find anymore. It's not as hard to find like the weird people who want to just show up as themselves, which is really exciting. And I think it's because we grew up listening to, you know, like you were able to find this self-confidence through listening to these older self-help books. I'm guessing you weren't listening to them. You were probably reading them. We didn't have Audible, did we? But, you know, it's cool because I feel like finding something like that when we grew up in the early 2000s or 90s, like that was unique to us. And now it's amazing that we live in a world where so many people are making this stuff. And it's like so widely accepted to talk about feelings. Like, do you feel like because you're living as an adult right now, like that has played a role in you coming out? Like by coming out, I mean coming out as a person having feelings. Like you're able to now admit, like, I am not Teflon. I have feelings. Do you feel like because of like this big movement that we've experienced in like a social shift of like letting our walls down a little bit, I think COVID helped with that too, for everyone to realize, hey, we all have the capability to be depressed and anxious. Do you feel like that has also helped, you know, convince you to, you know, be yourself and feel confident in that way?
I mean, I think honestly, like, yes, those things have all helped, but I think the reason why I like finally had to confront that I had feelings was because I like ran myself into the ground and had like the worst burnout, like really bad depression. I was not able to actually like see everything that was going on around me at first, because like that was something that really I think blew my mind a little bit. Was, you know, once I started getting into all the stuff that I read now, I was like, wait, like there's been this has existed for how long? Like, how did I miss this? I do think that I was very oblivious to that, like, right, like so many self-help like are from the, you know, like 70s, 80s, whatever, but I only discovered them a few years ago. So while I think my confidence has grown in publicly talking about everything through my art because it is more and more normalized, right? Like when we were teens watching like MTV or whatever, like no one was ever like your mental health matters, right? Like,
yeah, it wasn't meant for us. It wasn't marketed towards us.
no.
And it's like in the sense that, you know, you're an illustrator, I'm an illustrator, Jane is an illustrator. Jane is a name I made up, by the way. I'm not referencing anyone in particular. And we might all want to say the same thing, but we have our different styles and we have our different voices, and we attract different people. You know, we can like spread the same message in a different way, in a different style. And I feel like, yeah, we just weren't touched by that. Like there wasn't someone like coming to us being like, hey, it's cool to have feelings. And that was like in between like a chingy music video and like the real world. That wasn't happening. But I feel like now there are people who are trying to target, you know, younger kids and say, it's cool to have feelings. Everyone does. And that makes me really happy. And that is part of the reason why I'm like, yeah, keep going in this direction, because even if you didn't grow up that way, being told like it's okay to have feelings, it has always been okay to have feelings, and you need to keep convincing other people that that's the truth.
Yeah. No, it is. What?
Sorry, I clicked to buy your book instead of seeing if we had questions. I'll buy my third copy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is, it's a wonderful thing. And that's why, like, anytime maybe I get self-conscious about being like, oh, are there just like so many illustrators or so many people making this type of work? Like, is it oversaturated? But then I remember that, like, no, like there are so many people in the world that exactly what you're saying, like there are these like, you know, smaller groups that are maybe only going to relate to like one thing, and maybe one of your pieces online, right, like travels somehow to someone that really needs it. And for that,
or they could just see it, like they just happen upon your Instagram. Like it's all about, I think, like I want to say propaganda. It's not propaganda, but it's almost like we're like advertising, like, hey, stop here and think about this and get in touch with yourself. And you know, you never know who's going to stumble upon what in the right moment. It might be your illustration. It might be mine illustration. It might be Jane's illustration. And in my mind, like the more of that, the better.
Yeah, I think so. For sure.
What are some other illustrators aside from Jane who you admire who are working in this space?
Oh, there's so many, but let me think. I don't know. Who are some of yours? I need to like go on. I don't want to
pull one of our favorite people is Adam JK. He's a friend of both of ours, and he also makes books, and he also has a totally different way and style and voice from Grace and and I so admire like the way that I feel like he's more, it's funny, he's more of like a wordsmith. Like he uses a lot of type and a lot of words and like gets to the point in that way. And that would be so scary for me. And I think that's part of why I admire him so much.
I really love Yumi Sakugawa's work. I know that she's like hasn't really been on Instagram a lot recently, which, you know, I get it. But yeah, like there's so many people that are doing that. And I feel like, you know, I know social media can be very stressful, but it is definitely a place that like can lead you towards all sorts of really cool work.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a weird thing, but it's also the way that I've found out about most every illustrator I know. You know, it's like, how would I'm sure something else would pop up, but like, I mean, I guess I could like credit Instagram for our friendship, basically. And most of my friendships.
Why not?
Yeah. Okay, I want to dive more into the book. I'm wondering, like, how do you not take things so personally? You have a whole chapter about that. Uh, is that something that you have mastered, or is that something that you take on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, so again, like when I first heard, and I think it was in the Four Agreements, that book, when I first heard that like stuff isn't personal, right? You don't have to take things personally. This again was only a few years ago, and I was like, what the heck? I was like, are you for real? You know, like this immense weight lifted off of me. That did not mean that I started doing it all the time, but again, it just kind of like flipped things a little, where I was able to be like, oh, okay, if someone, you know, says something mean to me, like they're probably just having a bad day. And even if they don't like me, like that, I don't have to jump to the thought that, oh, I'm a bad person. Like if this,
God, why is it so hard to remember that though? Like both of those things.
I mean, I think at the root of it, which again, I like talked about a bit last night with Adam, is that rejection is always going to hurt. Okay. So like rejection is always going to sting. If someone breaks up with you, if someone doesn't want to be your friend anymore, that hurts. Like we are not, like 99% of us are not evolved to the point where like if someone, you know, wants to leave us, that we're just going to be like, okay, right? Like that's not real. But again, it's like you just practice this, you practice like a healthy level of detachment from it, and you start to see that like when these things come up, you can just again feel your pain of rejection, like let yourself feel that, but not spin it into all of these like extra mean stories about yourself that like, you know, you're not worthy of love and like you're going to be alone forever. It's like I think that what I know I did for so long, and I think a lot of people do, is you just kind of like run with it. You know, you take what someone says, some random person maybe you don't even know, right? Some random person online DMs you something rude about your art, and then you're just like, this person I don't know, they are the wisest person in the world, they know everything, like I'm gonna make them my higher power. And you know, it's just like so silly that we do that.
Why do you think it's like so much easier to give that advice to other people, or like put it in perspective for other people, than it is to take it? Because I like hearing you say that right now, you know, I'm sure everyone can relate to this. You'd be like, of course don't give that stranger your time. Like, of course don't care about what other Jane said in Mississippi about your art. She didn't like it. I mean, too bad it wasn't for her. You know, a lot of other people could put it into perspective, but then when it comes to me, I feel like sometimes I lose perspective and I'm like, oh, but this is specific to me. And like, you know, that wouldn't have mattered if it happened to Grace. It wouldn't have been real, but if it happened to me, it's different. Like, why is it so hard to remember for yourself and to have that confidence and conviction?
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the next book, right? I don't know.
Why is it so easy to forget what I know about other people and apply it to myself?
Yeah, I just think, right, it's because there's that distance. And I think that like that distance is the ultimate goal to have with ourselves, right? It's like this combination of being embodied, being in touch with yourself, but then also like letting go of the self, right? And being like,
yeah, totally. It's like
too spiritual, but it's like I am not it's like I am myself, but I also am not at the same time.
Totally. I mean, what I think of when you're saying that is like I could look at it objectively and see like this is a silly, stupid thing to give attention to. But then I will bring like all of my own, I don't want to swear, all my own stuff, about myself, like everything I've told myself or believed about myself, then I project it onto that and I'm like, oh, well, this takes on a different form. Like now that changes things, like maybe it's not so definitive that doesn't matter because I have my own insecurities about myself. It stinks that you have to, or that it's easy to bring that stuff into the equation instead of being like, no, it doesn't matter what a stranger says about you.
But one thing I do believe is that like that can shift. I don't think it ever totally goes away. Like, I have seen huge shifts in how I relate in those experiences. And again, not always, right? Like
totally. I mean, it helps to have visual reminders like this book, like anything, any illustrated thing or written thing that you can relate to and like have as a guide. Like you can always have this to flip through and feel less alone. Like it pulls you back. It like really does center you more. I feel like, I mean, one thing I want to ask you is like what grounds you, but like things like this, they really ground me. I don't know if you feel the same way.
yeah, no, and like that was something that I found myself doing like in this process between when I handed off the book, right? It's like out of my hands. I did the final edits, and until now when it came out, like that was a very challenging time for me. Just what was going on in my head, like anxiety wise. And I would, I'd have to like remind myself and go to the book and be like, you're doing this again. Like, look at the book. Like you've already, this, you just have to remind yourself. Yeah. And I think it's those reminders of things and just actually like, slowing down and taking a minute. And it's so easy to just always be going, always be doing stuff, always be distracting yourself with something, whether it's like watching stuff, being on your phone, like, I don't know, like eating, whatever it is that you do to just kind of like escape from yourself. Like it's going to happen. Sometimes you really need that. Like that's what you need. You need comfort. You need to feel safe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like whenever I do let myself actually slow down and just like look around and, like listen to what it sounds like outside, right? Or just like focus on an object, doing those sorts of things, just like.
It's amazing like how little you need like materialistically to just bring yourself back to center.
I know. It's so easy but so hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think I love being like forced out into nature and, not bringing my phone or something. And then it's like, well, I can't default to like my normal, my devices, it's like I have to be present in the moment and figure out a way to calm myself down or like counting, anything like that. I mean, I think you learn that type of stuff in therapy too, but
like objects that you carry with, that was something that you told me that really like
that.
Yeah,
I carry around like a rock, or I have like a squishy ball that a friend bought me. Actually, I have a mini slinky that I love that looks really weird when I'm on the subway and I'm like, it looks like I'm playing an accordion or something, but it really does bring you back. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it feels really nice that something that small, I don't know, can have a huge impact. And just as big of, maybe not just as big, but a different impact, but all the same, a great impact, like getting a text from a friend being like, you're great, you got this, have a good day. It's like, I can have my slinky, I can be like, yeah, I'm lucky to be here. Like, I know I'm anxious, but yeah, I'm not going to always feel this way. It's like you can like tuck yourself down a little bit and calm yourself, which is nice And it's always nice to get like this outside validation, outside advice from other people. But I think when you get to this point where you can rely on yourself or rely on nature or just the things around you to bring you back to that, it's really great. I mean, I think that you've done a lot of work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like taking days off, that's a huge thing that is very hard for self-employed freelancers like us.
Yeah, how'd you do that when you worked on the book? Were you able to?
I mean, it really is that like the person that I'm in a relationship with now, like he was like, no, we're taking the day off. We're like driving to the woods and going on a walk. I was like, all right, I guess. And then he'd be like, oh, wait, weird. I feel better when I'm not on my phone freaking out all day. How
Yeah. Oh my God. It's amazing that something so great that can connect you to your friends, connect you to like cool content like this book or like this talk can also be like a really toxic, bad, too much of a good thing. And also a lot of a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's just not a black and white world. That's so scary.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, if anyone has questions, I don't think there are any yet.
Yeah. No, there haven't been, but please ask.
We are open books, you know.
Ask about Grace's favorite snacks while she was working on the book. Ask about her baking habit. Ask about her dog Tony.
That is another thing that you have been great at encouraging is like crafts or just kind of like creating things that have nothing to do with like work, nothing to do with monetizing or like posting on
helps.
Like what is you made a lot, you were making like pot holders this year or no?
Oh my God. Yeah. Everything that I made when I was a kid, I was just like reordering like all those rainbow scratch papers that you just take like a little piece of wood to. And what do you say?
You did end up making art from those, like that you shared.
Yeah. Well, everything I got like really into, like I made like 50 pot holders. I've given away one. I think I promised Grace some, which she can definitely have, but they're like just sitting in a corner of my room. But really using my hands for anything aside from work has really helped me. And I know that that's baking for you too.
Yes, I love to bake. It's hard when it's just me and my boyfriend eating like a whole cake. But now that we can do dinner parties again, it's all changing. We have a question. We have Katie in the chat. Oh, cool. All right, we've got some here. I don't know if there's also those are the same ones.
Yeah. Yeah, they are, I think.
Cool.
So do you want to talk about your business model as a freelance illustrator?
So yeah, the thing is, it is really hard, and what I have found works for me is like just kind of like you kind of have to like diversify the ways in which you make money, right? Like
yes.
It would be wonderful if if you like just making art and comics about your feelings paid the rent, but we live in New York City. We live in a very expensive place, so I think it's like this. What I've tried to do is this balance of like getting these more like bigger commercial jobs, working with bigger brands, which again, that's like not easy to come by, but those things, more commercial work that's like less personal. And then, creating merch and like having merch. And then sometimes you do like editorial jobs, which can be more creative, but pay less. And then, right, the ultimate dream is like getting to work on a book where you get paid to make a body of personal work. And like, I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity, because one of my the things I loved about this last year, which was terrible for so many reasons, but was getting a chance to focus on one body of work. Like that's something that is very hard for me as someone who really struggles with like focus and procrastinating. Like when you're always juggling, you know, 5 jobs at once, it's really hard. So I loved that this book gave me a chance to just like focus on one thing. And yeah, that was like so new for me. And I was like, oh wow, this is really nice.
It's so funny because I felt so differently working on my book. I was like, I miss working on 1,000 things.
But hey, no, that totally makes sense. Like,
well, what I would say about my business model, the best advice I can give is to just realize that, at least in my case, your business model could change from year to year. Like, I definitely had some idea in my head of, you know, the more the time that goes on, like the more impressive clients I get, the more stable I'll be. And that was totally just not true. It's totally not true. You never know what's going to happen from year to year. And I also feel like a lot of people, no matter if they were freelancers or not, that experienced this just in the past year with COVID. You know, it's like, what is secure? What is security? And I think everyone defines that differently, but I think it's really important as a freelancer to realize, like, I don't know, success isn't linear. I don't really know if that's, but what is success to you too? I think I've had to really re-examine that for myself. Like, success isn't always having so much money in the bank and huge jobs on the horizon. And if it is, you might be pretty disappointed a lot of times.
exactly. And I have also like not to, you know, have a negative spin on our career choice, but you know, when I first was like wanting to become an artist, I was like, I will only be a successful artist if making art full time, like my day job is making art full time. And I think that like,
yeah,
it's really hard. Like it's really hard exactly to like to do this all the time because the industry is so like I don't even know. It's just yeah, it's just not straightforward and it's always
art. It's art. But also I feel like all of us, or a lot of us, have at one point uncovered like what it is that would make us a lot of money, and a lot of us have realized, oh, but I don't want to do that forever. So there have been like career paths or like ventures that we've gone down on and seen like, oh, this is very lucrative, but then it might not feel great. You know, you might be like, I feel conflicted, this is against my values, or I don't get to be myself and make the art that I really want to make. And so I think you definitely have to figure out what's going to make you happy, in addition to, you know, support yourself as much as possible. And those two things aren't like money and feeling like you get to be yourself aren't necessarily tied together. They're not synonymous with each other.
Oh,
it's hard.
Jennifer was wondering on advice on how to ease back in social situations after all this quarantine time.
We should be able to give you a lot of advice because we both took quarantine very seriously.
So what has helped me is like the few, you know, I've hung out with friends maybe like 3 times now, you know, after we've all been vaccinated, is I just like put it out there and like we'll talk about how weird I feel and how I'm like, whoa, like mouths, like I forgot that like what everyone's mouths look like. Like I think to acknowledge that like you're uncomfortable, to acknowledge that like this is something that, you know, we yeah, most of us, you know, have not done in over a year, and that's okay. And like everyone's gonna be kind of awkward, and again, like the world doesn't end because you just maybe you're kind of like quiet and weird when you hang out with people. Like I think that most people are feeling like that. So I've been acknowledging it. I don't know, maybe it's annoying, but that's just like that's how I'm doing it.
I think just be yourself. And also something that I've come to terms with is that I don't have to hang out with every person that wants to hang out with me. Like, and I'm not saying that a lot of people want to hang out with me, but not that many people want to hang out with me. But some relationships you might have realized in quarantine just didn't work for you, or like weren't giving you what you need, maybe weren't that healthy. And I think it's like we've learned that our energy and our time is precious, and it's like the only thing that we definitively have. So don't give it away to everyone. Like you don't owe it to everyone. And I think it will be a good time to make new friends and go out there and meet new people and do new things. So if part of what's making you nervous is that there's people that you just don't necessarily want to fall back in with, like just don't put that pressure on yourself, because that's something I'm personally working on. Like I don't have to say yes to every plan. I don't have to do everything, especially if it makes me uncomfortable. Like I'm trying to listen to myself more. Like, am I anxious because I just don't want to be there?
Yeah, that's real. Definitely.
It's hard. And I'm so sorry, Jennifer, to hear that. And I'm glad you're here. I hope that Grace's book and her words can maybe feel a little less alone. I don't even know. I mean, that sounds really tough, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah, no, it's right. There's so many, like it was so hard this last year to go through, all this, everything that came up, right? And I give so many props to everyone that, that we're starting to be on the other side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully we can now like be there for each other in person, like be there for the people we care about and help to physically take care of them. It's been a really crazy and isolating time.
I know.
Thank God for things like this. Thank God for like book events and websites that do keep us in touch with each other, because like what would we have done? What would we have done?
I know.
Well, any last words, any last thoughts from How to Deal? Anything that you feel like people gotta know about your book?
Just it wants to guide you, it wants to help you out. It's I really try to kind of like go over again, like self-help stuff in a like silly and friendly way that doesn't pretend like it has all the answers or knows everything, but really is more so like asking a lot of questions, because I think that's like,
I think that's what makes it perfect. Like it's thought provoking. It doesn't have the answers for you, but it will help you to find the answers.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. That I would, it's all I can hope for.
No, it's true. And it's funny, guys. It's really cute and it's funny, it's pretty, it's smart. So buy it. I have 2 copies. Almost bought a third during this. Still considering. I have 2 sisters after all, and they were here, and thank you for attending.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Hi, Olivia and Chloe. Oh, funny, last night I got called Chloe at my event.
Why?
The guy just like my name. Yeah, it's cool. But seeing your sister's name, I'm like, oh yeah.
You can have a pen name. You can write your next book under guys.
I really love the name Chloe.
Oh, yay, Jennifer. Make sure to put them both next to each other on your bookshelf. They'll look really good together.
really good together. But yeah, if no one has any other questions, we can maybe wrap up for now.
Oh, hello, Book Soup.
Didn't want to leave you lingering too long. Thank you both so much. This was such a great conversation. I feel like sometimes people don't want to talk about these things because it's hard. But this just felt so real and intimate in such a lovely way. So thank you for being so vulnerable in this space and bringing your wisdom to us. I didn't say it in the chat. I almost did, but love when people transparently talk about therapy. Think it's so good for everyone.
We
So
love to do it.
We could have done it for another hour.
it's
Get
so
a
good.
therapist, guys.
Yeah.
Get a therapist.
When you get the book, then go get a therapist.
There you go.
And
You
then
can
a psychiatrist.
therapy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. And thank you everyone who is here right now with us. I know it's Friday, and I hope this was a great way to kick off your weekend. And we'll see you at the next one. And congrats for both of your books. And Grace, congrats on yours. Thank you so much for both of you joining us.
Yeah, buy it from Book Soup.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, support your
It's the
local
only place
indie.
to get it.
Yes, buy lots of other books too, you know.
All right. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Everyone have a wonderful night.
Bye.
You as well.